I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Friday edition of Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along. We expect a lively, robust conversation. General theme today is going to be uh, how we navigate the holidays in general. I mean, this is a time of stress, and what do we do with holiday gathering tomorrow, Juneteenth, 4th of July is coming up, family reunions season upon us. And so we want to have members of the Healing Circle, our colleagues from the African American Child Wellness Institute, our partners in the Healing Circle, to lead us and engage us in a conversation around the theme of stress and navigating the holidays. And the subtext for that is what are we do about violence against children and by children? What do we do about safety in our community right now? I'm Al McFarlane. Thank you for being here. Before I start and bring on Zoe Severson and Tananye to talk about the topic that I mentioned, I want to take a second to talk about Juneteenth. And I got a press release. In fact, I did an interview yesterday afternoon with U.S. Senator from Minnesota, Tina Smith, and it acknowledged that legislation that she led, a bill that she led in the U.S. Senate, was passed into law, signed into law yesterday by President Biden. I think it was yesterday, might have been the day before yesterday. It was Thursday. And the press release I have says Senator Tina Smith Thursday was at the White House to witness President Biden sign into law her legislation to commemorate Juneteenth as a federal holiday. The Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, led by Senator Smith and her colleagues, Senator Edward Markey, who's a Democrat from Massachusetts, Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, Senator Raphael Warnock, Democrat from Georgia, and Senator John Cornyn, Republican, Texas, passed the Senate unanimously on Tuesday, and the identical House measure led by U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas was passed on Wednesday. And quoting her, she said, "The end of slavery in the United States is a critical milestone in our country's history. I fought to make Juneteenth a federal holiday because it's important to mark it as a day of celebration, reflection, and rededication to the cause of racial justice in this country." She went on to say, "I am forever grateful to the generations of activists who made this possible. In particular, I want to thank Ms. Opal Lee, who at 89 years old walked halfway across the country to raise support for Juneteenth as a federal holiday." Finally, she said, "This law is an important step, but we have much further to go on the path towards justice. Let's use this victory to build momentum for the systemic change we need, like protecting voting rights, safeguarding our democracy, passing meaningful policing and criminal justice reform, pursuing economic and environmental justice, and working towards a more just and equitable world." So Juneteenth, observed on June 19th, commemorates the end of slavery in the United States and is known as Emancipation Day, Jubilee Day, or Juneteenth Independence Day. On June 19th in 1865 in Galveston, Texas, Major General Gordon Granger issued General Order Number 3, which announced that in accordance with the Emancipation Proclamation, quote unquote, all slaves are free. Juneteenth, and thus the beauty and the power of the music that we opened with, the music by Gary Hines and the Sounds of Blackness, calling saying that the time for reparations is now. Tananye, I see that you're here. Thank you for joining us. So let me start, and I'm going to ask you, Zoe, to open up by explaining the Healing Circle process, because others will join us. We got a protocol here that we want to develop experience with as we go. So Zoe Severson, good afternoon. How you doing, my friend?
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good.
So, what the Healing Circle is it's a time and for us to all come together, for us to um, be together and talk about things that really matter to us, that affect us, the things that may go untalked about that but need to be brought to light, that need support. We're here to help the community. We want to talk about issues that are relevant to the community, and we want to be here to um, get knowledge out to everyone and for everyone to be able to have information that is extremely important and vital to uplifting the community, and not keep things that we like to keep in the dark anymore and bring them to light. So we typically have several different people on the Healing Circle. We have a talking stick that we like to use, a theoretical kind of talking stick that we pass along to each other so that no one gets talked over. And we use that as a way just to give respect and to let each person have the time that they need to say what they need to say.
Well, before we begin, let me once again acknowledge and thank Tananya Hurd, who is acting as a co-host today with you and me, Zoe, and also acknowledge Brenda Lau Gray, who's part of the Insight team. And documenting these conversations. I did see Lily Rankin pop in for a second, so maybe she's having trouble connecting, but I expect that she'll be joining the program. And I've invited a couple of other people who might be joining the program today as well. But if that doesn't materialize, we are in position to have a meaningful, fruitful, and robust conversation. And with that, I'm going to pass the talking stick to Tananya. And Tananya, however you want to sort of introduce the topic of stress and how we handle that in the holiday season, the things that lie ahead, and also talk about, if as you see fit, the question of increased violence by children and against children right now that we're experiencing here in Twin Cities and around the country. I'm passing the stick to you, Tananya. And you have to unmute. You have to unmute. There we go.
Okay, I'm sorry. My screen was frozen. All right. Yeah, my screen was frozen. Yes, stress and the holidays. I think that is something that we are just now paying more attention to since the pandemic. That's what I've seen. You know, we've always talked about, you know, stress and all of that, but since the pandemic, I think that's brought a lot of the mental health back to the forefront. And I know that with stress, you know, and COVID, we're finding ways to celebrate differently than we usually do, because in our culture, we like to get together, we like to tell stories, we like to gather, eat, conversate, and that has also been a real stressful point for a lot of people, especially people who have lost loved ones during the pandemic. So with Juneteenth coming up, while it's wonderful that this was signed into law as a holiday, but we're still hurting, we're still stressed, we're still feeling the things that we've been feeling. So it's just circles like this is very important to have this conversation. And with that, I'd like to pass the talking stick back to you, Mr. McFarlane.
Thank you, Tananya. And I think we're trying to get Lily to get on board. But I want to say to people that may be monitoring this through Black Press USA, we'd love to have your comments if you're monitoring through the McFarlane media platforms, Facebook, YouTube. We'd love your comments as well. So we're monitoring the Facebook stream, and we're monitoring the YouTube stream. And Kelvin, as you identify people with questions or comments, please post the comments or questions on the screen so we can all respond to and acknowledge them. We invite you, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're connecting through Facebook, to share, to like the program and to share it to your networks. We invite you to join the conversation, to comment on things that are important to you. This is a community conversation. And so I'm going to pass the talking stick back to Zoe. And Brenda, I know you're working, taking notes, so I'm not ignoring you, but I want to focus on the practitioners here. And Zoe, I wanted to uh, ask you to again put in context the question of stress for families and individuals during the holidays. Uh, do holidays elevate stress? Number one, and do certain holidays elevate stress more than other holidays, or certain holidays, just having a different impact on people? For example, Juneteenth, in years past, though we know it's changed because of COVID-19, was at first a super joyful occasion, but then over the years, there were incidents that would happen. When Juneteenth was here at Oak Park, and when it was at the Phyllis Wheatley Center, and then it moved up to the river in North Minneapolis. And then last year, I think it came back to Phyllis Wheatley Field. But over the period of time, there were incidences, or the perception that incidents might occur, that cast a certain light and a certain hesitation, despite this fundamental sense of joy and agreement and community. There was a fear element. That's what I would call it. And so, how does that impact our decisions, what we do, and how we show up celebrating holidays or observances like Juneteenth? And of course, we've got the 4th of July. I can say that in my neighborhood, we've been doing 4th of July fireworks for a while. And I know that a lot of my white neighbors, I think, get a little put. I see from social media from time to time where it seems like white people are particularly impatient when Black neighborhoods do fireworks for 4th of July starting in March, and that may go on through September. But so, what are your thoughts? I'm passing the talking stick to Zoe.
So yeah, so yes, there are definitely, our stress level, whatever our main, our status quo is during holidays. It's absolutely possible that our stress levels tend to heighten a little bit. Especially, I think, talking specifically about Juneteenth and let's say 4th of July, when the heat is also higher and we are maybe not having air conditioning, and we are cooking hot, cooking outside, and drinking maybe potentially more. All those things that maybe we keep kind of on the down low that we can kind of handle sometimes kind of start to creep up. And those things that may bother us may also creep up, and our mouths may start to go a little bit more freely. And we get a little more in trouble with, different family members, and then it becomes not so fun. As far as like the fireworks and the fear factor, I think right now, because we have had so many violent things going on and so many shootings, especially of children, and these are events that children are all around, fireworks are extremely triggering for many people. And that's extremely, it's not helpful for any of us to have that kind of fear, adrenaline kind of rushing through our veins, and um, not being able to enjoy. So I really encourage us all to take a deep breath. One, to know our neighbors as much as possible, know who's in our community, know what's going on, develop plans of action to keep each other safe, to keep each other aware, but also to remember to take time as far as helping yourself bring that stress down. Monitor how much you're drinking. Try not to drink too much. Enjoy yourself, sure, but not drink to excess. To do periods of quiet time. It doesn't have to be so-called prayer or meditation, but just taking time to be quiet is really helpful, and it brings down the stress levels that we often have. When you're having problems with family members or friends, take a step away and take a breather kind of thing. Excuse yourself from the situation, and so you can focus and recompose yourself. Fireworks for many people, I'm going to go back to, is extremely triggering, especially for our veterans. That's always something that I hold dear to my heart, that we need to be mindful and aware and check in on our veterans as far as if they've seen combat or been near explosives and things like that. Fireworks can be really triggering, and they may not even always know that they've been triggered. And so to just check on them, you don't have to be like super pushy about it because they may not like that either. But just to be aware that, be mindful about where you're putting off your fireworks. and letting them know if you are going to be doing fireworks that you're setting them off, because that in itself can be helpful. Because like any of us, when you're startled, that's no fun. And their startle reaction is much lower than the average person when they've been in that kind of situation. So I want to make sure that that gets out there, that if you're going to do fireworks, if you're doing them in your neighborhood and you know you have veterans, give them a heads up that you're going to be doing fireworks at this time from this time, because they're also very aware of the different violence that's going on in some of our communities. And they're also listening for that as well. And those sounds are very different, but they're still very similar at the same time. But so that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. And I'm passing the stick to Tananya. As far as children, how do the children kind of
Thank you,
run
Zoe.
into that?
I told Yeah, I totally agree with you. I know that in the peer counseling that I do, when I talk to people, another stressor and trigger for Juneteenth as well as Independence Day that I hear from my clients is the fact that, well, why are we celebrating Juneteenth? We didn't find out until this date that we were actually free. And then when you come to the Independence Day, people are really, and this is just in counseling, people have been saying, well, we're still not free. We still don't have our reparations. We still, so for me, from what I see, I think it's a combination of we're happy that we have these holidays and they're being recognized. But we're also still well aware of the trauma behind these holidays and the fact that we still don't have justice, which, justice means to be made whole again. And we're recognizing that, this is all well and fine, but we are not whole. And so there are still just so many people that are in so much pain, even generations who never experienced slavery. And I just think that that's where some of that comes from. And I'll pass the talking stick back to you, Mr. McFarlane.
Well, thank you. What would be great? I appreciate this conversation so much. Let's do something, and I love to have our counselors on the team, though we've done it before, present your credentials. Where do you speak from? And I also like to have you share your story about how and why you have come to the work and what motivates you to be a caregiver, a therapist, and how your experience, your background, and your passion, really set you in a position to connect with and support the people that are your clients and to support the community. So Tanan, you want to pass it back to you first and then to Zoe.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, for me, I grew up with a family mindset that, we take care of our own. We're worried about everyone else, but we take care of our own. So I was in this married at 16. I was a widow by the age of 29, where I really realized what it meant, what a village meant. Because before that, it was, we look out for our own and just leave the rest alone. And when my husband was murdered in 2007, that's when I started just walking around, seeing the community in a totally different light. I began to attend community meetings and actually started volunteering with the Peace Foundation when it was the Peace Foundation, which is now Northside Achievement Zone. And that was really the catalyst, me just volunteering in that space back in 2008. That was the catalyst for me to see that this is bigger than my family, this person's family. This is a collective. This is about common humanity. And that's where I found the word compassion for me to include common humanity. And from there, I began to do trainings. And I am not a licensed therapist, but I am a certified life coach and peer counselor. So I just wanted to make that distinction that I am not a licensed therapist, but I am a peer counselor and I do have the certification for life coaching. And that's really how I got into that arena, with seeing all the tragedies that were happening back in 2008, all of the this murders and the black on black crime, and just getting to the root of that. And that's when we realized that, these people are acting out because of pain. And so that's what got me to just into the work, and then deciding that this is what I want to do professionally, because this is my life passion. And we all know that everything works better if you're working out of your passion. I've worked finance jobs, I've worked this jobs, I worked up while trying to volunteer, but I just never felt that I could do it in the capacity that I could do it if I just put my whole heart, my soul, invest my time, and do the trainings for what it was that I was looking to do. So that's how I got in this arena all the way back in 2008, a year after my husband died. And then I've lost 2 adult children who suddenly passed away in their sleep. It was not violence related, which, I fought against violence, just, and never thought about my children would just not wake up one day. So just all of these personal experiences combined with just the training has turned into my life's work.
Would you be willing
And
to
I
talk
will
more
pass the
about your
talking
husband and
stick to you. So. Oh,
talk about your husband and the
oh,
circumstances of his death?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was married at 16 years old, and planned to be married for the rest of my life. Moved here in 2000. Actually, moved into Minnesota in 1998. My husband and 3 children at the time. And it wasn't until 2007 that he was standing at a bus stop on his way to work, and he was robbed by an 18-year-old at the time and murdered. He gave the 18-year-old the money, but that, he was still shot right on 37th and Girard. So right there on Dowling, going to that bus stop right there. And that was really not only the closest death, but that was the first sudden death in my family. So it was complicated grief that I knew that I was dealing with. And I felt all the things that people feel when these things happen. You're angry, and all the stages of grief that you go through. But I started to think, as I was going to court and seeing this young man going through the court process, I could see that this young man was broken as well. And it took many months, and even that took a lot of coaching and therapy. But I was actually able to talk to the young man that murdered my husband. And he told me about his life and the traumas of his life and the things that were going on, that he was homeless at the time, and just so many different things that made me really want to look outside of myself and what was going on in my family. And then I happened upon Miss Mary Johnson, who, her story is remarkable, the same, where she
Amazing.
actually met with the person that murdered her son. And to me, that was so inspiring, and that made me really look at things from a totally different perspective, because hurting people hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be angry, I could be, I could waste away, but I decided to do something. And I did that partly, and when I say partly, this is probably the most significant reason why I've tried to look at the flip side of things, is because that's how my husband was. Mm-hmm. He was just a generous person. He would talk to any and everyone. He would make conversation. When people were having problems, he was the one that would be like, come on, let's all get together and talk about this. Everything can be worked out. And it's that legacy that I want to carry on. That, he's not here anymore, but I want to carry on that legacy where I'm not just looking at my pain, but the pain of others. So I credit that to my husband that made me look outside of myself. Just and us being so young and him just having that knowledge and just always just having that just openness to everyone from such a young age. That will forever be in my heart, just with my husband, because he is the one that had me look at other people's issues, not just my own. What's going on in other people's lives? And that's the most beautiful thing to me, about my husband. And I can pass the talking stick to you, Zoe. Thank you.
Well, a couple more questions. One is, what time of day did this incident that with the young man where he killed your husband? When did it happen? He was waiting on a bus before work, after work. When did it happen? That's number one. And then, under what circumstance did you meet and have a chance to talk to this young man sometime afterwards, after the court and after the trial and things like that? So, would you mind sharing on either of those points or both? And I'm not sure if you heard my question. Are you able to hear me, Tananya? Yeah, Zoe and Brenda, are you guys hearing me at all or not? Do you know? You are? Yeah. I don't think Tananya heard my last question. Well, maybe she'll get it and come back. Zoe, let's go to you. Let me pass the talking stick to you. And you tell your story. Tell your story. I think I so appreciate Tananya saying what she said, because it's revealing, and it touches all of us, because we all have tragedy at one level or another in our lives, and we all have to find the path to healing, right? And my impression, I'm only a journalist. I'm just an observer. I have no other credentials, but my impression as a journalist is that she has discovered a pathway to making sense of the senseless, right? And finding a way to heal out of the most intense and unrelenting pain. And so I'm just grateful that her experience has brought her this far, and grateful to her for her being able to and willing to share that story. I think that testimony is healing in itself. Zoe, tell your story.
Yeah, so first off, Nanny's definitely living up, doing wonderful by her husband. It's clear she does great
And
work.
I need you to lean into your microphone a little bit more, because
Oh, there we go. Are we there?
yeah,
Good?
yes, we are.
All right. Yeah, just that Nanya, she's amazing, and she's definitely living up to her husband's legacy. That's for sure. As far as my story, um, I think I was born into being a healer, a therapist. I have many family members that are either doctors or therapists or clergy people. Um, I've basically, my mom was a therapist way back when. I just kind of always enjoyed watching her and watching her. Um, when people would see her light up and know that she's actually helped them, and that she impacted their lives in a meaningful way, and that she too kind of always took the glass half empty and made it half full, and like no matter what you can find a positive. I also got that from my dad, and my dad is definitely the man who was the guy who goes out, and he still does. He's now in an old folks home, but he was the one who would go around the neighborhoods and talk to everybody. He's the one who, when guys didn't have dads, he'd kind of, end up being their dad figure. And I realized that that's important, and that that's a way that you can help community, and that's a way to bring healing, even if it seems really small and insignificant.
Mhm.
That it really does end up being something quite major when it's 20, 30 years down the road and someone says, oh, I knew your dad, he helped me do this. Or I knew your mom, she helped me through a really hard time with my parents. Um, and I've taken that and I've taken it to heart. And I love the career that I'm in. I love helping um, people that are struggling, helping them find ways to turn that negativity into power, into strength, into a story, not so much a label of negativity, but something that they've gone through, that they've lived through, and they can now use as a badge of honor. We all have scars. We all have issues that we've dealt with. I think it's the way that we kind of perceive them and how we lay them out there that helps us get through or don't get through the issue. I myself have a genetic disease called cystic fibrosis, and I was diagnosed with that at birth. At the time when I was born, and that's no longer the case, when I was born, they said that I probably wouldn't make it to 18. I'm now way past 18, and as my dad would say, I'm still kicking. And I think that has also been a gift that my parents gave me, that they said never give up, always keep striving, always look for the positive. Just because X, Y, and Z says this is your path doesn't mean that has to be your path. So I'm always kind of looking outside of the box and going against what they say, whoever they are, and finding my own way, and knowing that if I have the drive, I have the want, I have the passion, and a little bit of luck, no doubt, I can get there and I can achieve that. Um, so I use that with my clients, and I show up for my clients as much as I can, in a very real, authentic way. Some people say I'm a little direct and a little I can be more direct than some people sometimes like, but I'm also very much a Midwestern girl. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, so that's kind of my story. And I'll pass the stick to Brenda, I guess, since Tanania's not back.
Brenda, go ahead.
I think about my scars a lot. I'm an only child, and my mother lost 4 children. I was the only survivor. She was RH negative, and that during those days and times, they knew very little about the negative blood type, and there was only 1 or 2 Black doctors. And I suffered a lot. And even in my winter season, as you know, Al and I went to kindergarten together, so that makes, he's not 74 yet, but I turned 74 in March. And I'm finding that I'm really struggling. A friend of mine just told me about an hour ago, she said, Brenda, you got to get help because you can't deal with this by yourself. My children are, my daughters are in LA. And I think COVID kind of brought it to my attention to the fact of just how alone I was. And being a divorcee and raising 2 children alone, and both of them were athletes. And I think I just wrote an article about how it was as a parent. I was teaching one of the top curriculums in high school, International Baccalaureate. My daughter was playing basketball, running track, and my other daughter was playing tennis. And I had to be in all of those circles. And there was never any time for me. But it was my responsibility to be there for my children, because I watched as my students did without so many things, and I didn't want my daughters to do the same. So I have come to the conclusion that I do have to find therapy. And unfortunately, unfortunately, I live in a city that does not have, I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the mountains. And I've been coming to Santa Fe since I was 6 years old, and I fell in love with the city. But it will no longer be the same, I don't think, not in my lifetime. But there are no Black therapists. And I had gone to 4 when I lived in LA, and I recognized the fact that they would not have a clue. So that's my task now, is to work through this pain of aloneness, and I've watched a couple of my friends leave this world that I didn't, expect. So I was dealing with that. But my faith has kept me balanced. And I find that when it gets too hard, I have a place to go. And Dr. B taught me that when I first met her um, online. I haven't met her personally, but I kept telling her, you just don't know how much you have helped me when, I mean, she's so powerful in how she presents our ancestry and the strength and the resilience that we have. And then when Al and I interviewed a minister, Dr. Sarais, from Somerset, New Jersey, and he just blew both of us away. The only thing we could say at the end of the interview was phenomenal. But even from him, I was able to grab so much strength in what and insight as to what I should be doing. And of course, my writing helps. It's so cathartic. And I so appreciate it because I think I would be lost at this particular point. I haven't seen my daughters in 3 years, but it's been because of COVID. It's so many different things. But I'm so appreciative to Dr. B, and I'm so appreciative to learning from all of our guests about how we as Black people have so much depth in resilience and strength. And we have to hold on to that because I'm very concerned about our children, what's going to happen when they go back to school in September, how strong parents can be in order to lift themselves up and also be there for their own children. So that's where I am. There's my friend. So I just paid you a compliment, lady, and I truly, truly appreciate all of the guidance that you have given. You just will never know. So anyway, I'm going to pass it to you if that's okay, to Al.
That's fine. Absolutely.
So I'm assuming you're talking about me. I didn't know I was actually seen in the studio, but I'm glad that I had on some lipstick today.
Well,
But
we're glad to see you.
I've
Looking good,
heard
Dr.
a
B.
powerful conversation about healing. And the thing that I was thinking about and wanted to just say from my heart is how that healing, when we heal others around us. And it's not an action that we have to deliberately take. When you bring a well spirit or a healing and loving spirit into any space, darkness has to move for the light. Hate has to move for the love. They just have to scoot over because there's not enough space for that much love and respect and trust to exist in the world where there's darkness. It removes it, it shatters it. And as I was sitting here listening to the healing stories and the horrific experiences that we have overcome despite we've thrived despite of the many people who wanted to break us. I just kept remembering that we are truly divine. We are God's legs and heart and hands on this earth. Our heads talk to our hearts, and our hearts talk to our hands. Our thoughts talk to our feelings, and our feelings talk to our behavior.
Wow.
So when we come in this space and we bring this healing, loving, compassionate, even woundedness into a broken space we have to heal. Just by hearing you, Brenda, I begin to hear my own hear my own healing calling up in me. Same thing to Nanye, telling your story, talking about your pain, and seeing you as a bodacious sister, still standing and taking care of your business and your community. And you, Zoe, who have defied logic and predictions and become not just a therapist that heals the soul and the spirit, but a nurse who heals people's bodies. Oh, come on. And Brenda, with your writing that elucidates, clarifies, and elevates our experience as Black people. And my brother Al is the consummate historian of our voice, who can't be healed in the midst of this power. I don't know who couldn't be healed.
Well, listen, I got my box of Kleenex right here. That's what happens when Dr. B gets on the case. Dr. B, never a tear, never a dry eye, and I love you for that. And I thank you for that, because you bring such genuine foundational authenticity. You get to the core of the matter, and the core for me is your declaration that we must acknowledge that we are the hands and the arms and the expression of the divine. Yeah. And once we discover and remember that, it changes the game. And then not only are we seeking healing and experiencing healing, but as you said, we become healing. Healing is who we are, and healing is what we are, and where we walk and what we say is an expression. It's making an evidence. It is the evidence in practice, in motion, of the act of healing. Our being is healing in and of itself. Am I channeling that right, Dr. B?
Oh, you're teaching up in here. Tell the truth. Yes, you know you are. Yes, you are. That's correct. We are it. Mm-hmm. We are it.
And Tananya left us for a minute because her connection was bad. I wanted to have you spend more time, Tananya, because I wanted to thank you, first of all, for sharing. What you shared was elucidating, and powerful. And as I was saying that, I'm looking at you now, and in this screen, I'm seeing something angelic, just to be real plain about it. Your countenance is something that reveals something special, something great. And I'm just saying I recognize it, and I see it. And I'm letting you know, and the world know that I see you and the God in you. That's what I see right now. And so I thank you. I'm saluting that, and I'm bowing to that, to Nanye. And so tell me more. Your work, your mission, your passion.
Thank you so much.
And I'm passing.
Well, as I said, my passion is my passion is really compassion. And before I kind of got disconnected, that's what I was talking about. I came to see self-compassion, compassion for others. I came to see that entire term as common humanity. And that's what I've learned in my life experience, is just that, we have to look beyond and also within. So, as I was doing different things, and that's what I was kind of talking about, as I was volunteering and just listening and just being in different healing circles way back in 2007, that's when I first felt the power of sitting and talking and passing stories and knowing that when you're actually telling your story, you are healing yourself. And, some people say, oh, you don't have to talk about it if it's too much. And every time I'm met with that, I say, no, I need to talk about that. Not only because it could help someone else, but because every time I talk about it, it helps me heal.
Amazing. Who are you going to pass the talking stick to?
I can pass the talking stick back. I'll pass it back to Zoe.
Oops, hitting the wrong buttons there. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tananya. When you tell your story, you never know who you're going to help, but you also are kind of going through some healing process of your own and bringing those stories to light. And when you bring things to light, you have healing. You can't, denying the stories, denying what you've gone through does not help you. Talking about it with others, writing it out, like you said, Brenda, you know, are things that we need to do in order to help us heal and to help others heal. And that energy back and forth doubles, triples, quadruples. It's infinite, and the ripple effect that happens when we tell our stories, when we come together as community, it may affect one person, then another person, and then another person, and all together that raises energy levels to a tremendous level, which brings us hope, which brings us healing, which brings us light, which brings us guidance, which brings us at the end back to the source or God or Allah or divine being. So stories are kind of at the root of doing that and remembering that. And I think with COVID, it was real easy to isolate, but it also for some was able to remind us that we really do need community, we really do need family, we do need friends, we need those outlets, we do need to be with each other. We are humans. Um, we like to be with people. We like to be with each other. And COVID made us not be able to be with people. So I think now we're like, oh wait, maybe we can put down our devices a little bit here, and we can really show up and not, have dinner and really actually put down our phones and actually connect with each other and be together and hear each other's stories and hear about the day. And just because it's a little thing doesn't mean it's not helping somebody, doesn't mean that it's not, relieving some stress. It's important. You're important. And people need to remember that no matter how dire your situation, no matter how insignificant you think it is or think you are, you're not. And you need to, connect with others and be heard. And it's your right to be heard and to be loved and to be cared for. And yeah, I just want people to know that tell your stories, be with community, be with friends, reach out, like I said, especially this weekend, to your community. Try to remember the good things that are going on. Yes, we have a lot of darkness, but it's through the light that we're going to get better. So let's focus more on the light and being together and what we do have and go forward. And remember that the veterans out there, remind them about those fireworks if you're doing them nearby, and check on your veterans. Check on those that may have PTSD, that may have the startle effect kind of thing going on, shell shock, whatever you'd like to term it, to make sure that they're safe and that they're doing okay. And I'll pass it back to Mr. Al McFarlane.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been a wonderful discussion, a powerful discussion. And I want to thank people who might be connecting with us through Black Press USA. I invite you to be here every Friday at this time. We want to expand the conversation. And if you have particular expertise or not, but want to connect with the spirit of this conversation, reach out to us and we can get you and your voice and your point of view involved in this healing circle, this conversation. My email, the easy one, is al@insightnews.com. So if you got a minute, you want to connect with me, al@insightnews.com, and we'll try to bring you into the conversation. And the same thing goes for those who are listening on the McFarlane Media Interests social media platforms, our Facebook and YouTube channel. We want to connect to you. Well, the one big story right now, as of yesterday, Dr. B, and I'll say this big story in the context of the George Floyd story being big and not going away, the COVID-19 story being big and not going away, the violence, the gunfighting, gun shooting, the loss of children to gun violence being big and not going away. But the other big story right now is the story about Juneteenth being declared a national holiday. And I wanted to particularly ask you, Dr. B, as a Texan, I believe, to talk about what this can mean and should mean. How do we use this historical memory to advance the question, the notion of dignity, of humanity, of democracy, of equity, and of not forgetting. I think it's about never forgetting. I want to say one more thing too, before I pass the stick to you, Dr. B. I had a chance at a clinic yesterday. I was going for some blood work after a visit with my doctor, and told the young lady who was doing that I was, a journalist and a writer and owned Insight News, et cetera, et cetera. Said, well, do you cover North Minneapolis? I said, yes. Well, she was the stepmother of one of the children that was killed, one of the two girls, the 6-year-old, I think, and an 8-year-old. And I know the 6-year-old was KG's grandchild, and the other child, and I don't have the name right now in front of me, but she was that child's stepmom. And just like that, we're connected. Yes, we reported on it, but here's a person who's experiencing, through her husband in particular, in her own household, this violence that has affected her. That's one thing. The second thing is, I want to, in case he's on, before the call happened today, I got a call from a cousin of mine that I've never met in person, but I love him dearly. His name is George, who called me from Florida just to check in. And George Hudson is probably my senior by several years, but he's a Jamaican. And when I met him the first time online, he told me a story of seeing my father when he and my father were kids up in the hills in Jamaica, up in the Blue Mountains in Jamaica. So this whole thing of connecting with family means something. Connecting means something. And I was talking to him about the reason I love the genealogy so much is that I believe that it's valuable that we reconnect and that we know our roots. And it's like the prophet Ezekiel said when he was standing and asking the Lord, can these dry bones live again? And he was commanded to speak to them, and they were able to reconnect and create a new man, a new woman, a new people. And I think that's where we are right now. And I think DNA and technology are going to be the evidence of the prophetic nature of that statement, that story. So Dr. B, I'm going to pass the talking stick to you to wrap this up and make it all make sense.
Thank you so much for your visionary leadership and the way that you share your narrative and our own, and you just elevate it to such a high level of humanity and respect and love. And as I think about Juneteenth, I am from Texas. I was born in Texas, and this whole week, I was just thinking about being that little black girl in that at the old settlers parade, looking at a bathroom that said white and one that said colored. And I remember running to that colored bathroom and it being, thinking it was going to be pink and green and yellow and orange, and getting there and it's white, and coming back and tell my mama that those people lied, that bathroom was not colored. And seeing that same day the water fountain that said white and colored, and the little white girl going to the fountain, turning it, expecting to get colored water. Before she got to turn the sprocket, her mother grabbed her hands and said, "You can't drink from that colored water fountain." And she had a fit because she wanted the color water. She wanted that color water, and I went and turned it, and it was clear. In the day that I remember being black. I also remember going to the movie theater, and all the black kids went up to the balcony, and I thought it was by choice. It wasn't for years later that I realized that that was Jim Crow. We couldn't sit downstairs. And so I think about Juneteenth and remember that none of us will be free unless all of us are free. No one will be free until all black boys and girls can jog down the street without being killed. Whether they have Skittles or hoodies on, whatever they are doing, that they be safe. So Juneteenth to me finally acknowledges that people who were still enslaved for 2.5 years after freedom didn't get the word. So now we need to save ourselves and share the word that we have been free. We have been freed, and we have to fight for our freedom every day. And starting, like they say, the ruin of a nation begins in the home of its people. Let's free ourselves
Yes.
in our homes and in our community by loving each other. Loving each other like brothers and sisters. Remember, we have a common place, and gangs have no place to bring darkness. Guns have no place for their darkness. Let's shine our light of love, not just in words, but in actions. So that is what Juneteenth means to me. I'm going to have my moon pie, my big red, my barbecue, and my fried chicken, just like the best of them. But we got to remember where it came from.
With that, I want to say thank you to one and all. This has been a wonderful, I call it robust conversation. I'm Al McFarlane. I'm going to close with the music we started with, and that's the tune by the phenomenal Sounds of Blackness, led by Gary Dennis Hines, Time for Reparations. And we'll see you next time.